All right, we're back on the next episode of The Pathfinder. So if you remember last episode, we went ahead and got the hoop done. We took care of the rear shocks. We got the new bars on the front, and we really like get those kind of sorted out. And we even got it fired up. Revved up pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. So in this episode, what we're going to go ahead and focus on is this whole front end. We're going to try and get the handlebars right. You get the headlight bucket, the dashboard, all the wiring figured out, and get that sorted. So then we can start to move back here and figure out how we're going to mount all of the electronics in the back. So stay tuned. We're going to make this thing wicked. Well, in my personal opinion, one of the most important aspects of a custom build motorcycle is going to be how the handlebars and the front end is set up. Obviously, not only for comfort, but looks, style. If you just have a bunch of wires and garbage hanging out all over the place up here, it's not going to look right. So we got to figure out a way that we're going to tuck everything in here. We're going to clean it all up. And this massive wiring harness from a custom cruiser, we got to figure out what we're going to do with all those wires. Now, I did get an aftermarket dashboard or gauge cluster that has a cable run speedometer and a electrical tack. So that's perfect for what we need here. We're going to figure out how we're going to mount all that, make that look good. But before we start, we got to get these controls in place and mounted on these aftermarket bars. Now we've already figured out that the factory switch functions, the starter, the on and off, and the cable for the throttle. So I'd like to keep this control. Now adding it to these aftermarket bars, one thing that these controls have them on is a little tab that's down in here that helps lock the control into place. With these bars, there's no holes. There's nothing drilled into this. So we've got to figure out a way to mount them in there or drill a hole, mark its spot. And what I like to do that is get the grip into place and see where we're going to be mounted here. Identify the angle that I want the control, the buttons and the switches to be at, which I've already found that I want them to be in line with the driver like this. So we can get this even plane going across. I don't really know how to show that on video, so this is going to have to do. What I like to do is, since these are painted, I can just grab this, put as much pressure as I can, and just give it a little bit of a wobble and push into that paint. And what that should have just done is created a little mark on the bottom where I want to tap that hole. Now, I can make this adjustable, and I've done this before, where not only do I drill one hole, but maybe one to the left and one to the right of it. And then anybody in the future has the ability to go ahead and adjust this at several different angles. We're going to go for the most straight on angle to the rider, and I think that'll work out just fine. So we're going to go do that on both sides, get these bars off, get up at the vise, and go ahead and tap that hole. Well, nothing crazy here, but I did get the little mark in there, one on each side. All I'm going to do is get a little pilot hole going. All right, one on each side. Then I go back to the factory size bar and see what size the hole is. And I've determined that a 3/16 will do the trick. I'll get in there. Boom. All right, cool. Now that gives us the ability to lock those controls into place. Now while I have the bars off, I do want to sort out the headlight bucket mount. Now, I think I can go ahead and use these factory ones. I'm going to clean them all up. While I have this off, I'm going to go ahead and pop the top of the tree off. See if I can't straighten this one out. It's been bent just from laying on the ground. And remember when I found this, there was no headlight on it at all. So I'd really like to use that. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to pop these off. Take the center bolt out. We should be set. All right, even though this looks like it's a thinner metal, it's actually pretty stout. Your friend on this is going to be heat. I could probably pry it up and get it back into place without heat, but I'm going to severely weaken the metal in here. So what I want to do is just go ahead and heat it up, get some fire on this, and do all that sciencey stuff. Get a pair of pliers and just get in here and start working it. It's red hot over here. Alright, don't burn your hand. And just get on there and work it into place. And hopefully we rescued that. There we go, brought her back around. Go ahead and line it up to the old one, or the other one. It looks like they're both gonna do their job. So we can go ahead and clean that up as well. Maybe tap that out with a finishing hammer. Get it on here and we can tap in the bend from the backside. Yeah, I think that'll work. But we're going to get in here, we're going to grind this down anyway. We're going to clean this all up, and then we're going to go ahead and powder coat these black. All right, I spared you the pain of watching me just do the bolt-on stuff. This is all the easy things that you guys can clearly do. Got a couple little things to do, like the old aluminum of the clutch lever had been slammed in the ground at some point and bent in, so we got to bend that out and get the cable back off. I think the cable's okay. I'm going to leave this wiring back here for now because we're going to start working that up through the headlight and figure out how all the controls go. Unfortunately, the speedometer setup that I bought got lost in the mail. So we're going to leave this portion for another day. But I want to start working the back stuff. So here we have the whole fuse assembly and relay assembly. Normally bolts onto the frame, hangs on there. We got to get creative with this. So busted out the 3D printer and I made a little box. Now there's a slide cover that's going to go over this. What I want to do is trim this up, slide it down into the box, and these connectors are going to come through the back side of the box over here. And then when we put it into the bike, it'll be its own little enclosed area. You won't see all the extra wiring. You won't see all the ugliness of this. It'll just be a nice, clean black box. what I came up with for the box. So like you saw, I cut the hole in the back, I epoxied that in, sealed it up. I'll make this look a little prettier later, but I got the plugs all in, looking good. And then if you slide the cover off, you got access to all your fuses and whatnot. We'll find a pretty cool little spot. Find the best place to kind of mount this up out of the way. Probably in between this bracket and the lower bar. And it'll be kind of hidden in this little area, but all the wires can run up along the top, and then you don't have all this ugly, crazy looking stuff underneath. For now, I'm going to leave it hanging here because I'm going to make sure that after I change some of this wiring that we're still good. And then the next step is to go back up front, and we're going to start working the wiring that's going to come off the ignition switch and everything for the dashboard. All right, anytime you're dealing with something like this and you got a big wiring harness, almost a rat's nest, and the connectors are still on, which is good, but I still have no idea what any of this is for because there was no speedometer or dashboard hooked up to this. That's an awful lot of wires. So we got to kind of break down what these are. Best thing you can do is get yourself a wiring diagram. Now, I showed you this in the first episode, but these are great to have, and they're pretty easy to find online. You know, I got this for free online. It's pretty correct. There's a few ways, and I'll show you in a minute how you can confirm that everything looks right, but breaking these wiring diagrams down, you look at that and it looks just like, holy crap, what am I getting into? It's really not difficult. Everything's labeled. You get a colored one, everything's color coded. Even if it's in black and white, they'll always show the breakdown of the colors. And if you see the backslash, that means like blue with a red tracer, red line through it. And then you'll see that it's blue, red. Really easy to follow. These things are not a nightmare. And you can literally just trace the wire all the way over here and then see where it goes. Now, when there's large connectors, it's sometimes often you got to figure out which wire goes into which connector. But this isn't really a circuit board, so it's really easy to just pin it out. You go and follow that color, and then you see it on the connector, and you're like, there it is. It's that simple. It's not a trick. Everything's really well labeled. Got the color codes, and if you notice, this dashboard was super fancy. They got all sorts of stuff on here. High beam indicator, right turn, left turn, blah, blah, blah. They have a side stand warning light, a headlight failure indicator. So in case you can't see, you'll know why as long as that light comes on. Neutral, oil pressure, tach, voltmeter, fuel gauge, all that fun stuff. And it goes down, and that's all the wires that I'm looking at right now hanging off the front of the bike. So what I'm going to do is one by one, match them up over here, confirm what I have, and I'm going to start cutting these harnesses apart and pulling out the wires I need and then labeling them. Because we don't need all this stuff for this kind of bike. All right, this whole harness goes up to the ignition switch. And we'll talk about the ignition switch in just a bit. But yeah, so we'll go through that. I'll match them up. Every time you find a wiring diagram and you think it's going to be for the bike you want or you have, go through and find the stuff that's easy to recognize. Like this is the headlight. It's going to be high, low, and ground. We've got on there red, black, and black, yellow. So the color, the thicker color, is always going to be the first part of the color code. So in this case, you'd see R and then BK, which means it's red, but it has a black, we call them tracers, or the thin line. It's called a tracer. So we've got BKY. That's going to be black with a yellow tracer. We'll have RY, red with yellow tracer, and RBK, red with a black tracer. Now, move back over your wiring diagram. Now you know what that is. It's going to be the headlight bucket. So come up here and look for the headlight. And let's look at the colors. I've got black, yellow, and red, black. So I know that that's pretty accurate to that point, right? So we know that harness is good. Other knowns, go to those and do the same thing. And after you confirm a couple, you know that this diagram does match your bike. It's hard because these diagrams have been around forever. So have the bikes. Things change. Things never got updated in diagrams. But you confirm just a couple things like that, and you'll know that you're pretty much on track for the right diagram for the bike. Does that make sense? Probably not, but okay. Now, before we get too far into anything, I did move some wiring around. I manipulated a lot of stuff. So I want to make sure that we're still back to square one with being able to crank it over and have spark. Double check that before you go wasting a bunch of time. Get back to the basics, make sure we're good. Now remember, I did change out this clutch lever. The factory clutch had 3 wires on it. This one only has 2. Looking at the diagram, I found that I could jump the black and the yellow together, and I can crank again. If I unplug that, it won't crank. That tells me the switch is working. So we will end up cutting this off and rewiring it to fit this switch. And it's an open close, two-way, or single way, I'm sorry. Open close, momentary, pull that in. It'll allow it to crank only while you have the clutch pulled in. So safety measure, that's a pretty good one to have in case you forget you're in gear. Next up, we're going to look for the spark. Do we still have spark? And we'll get down here, same test as always, you know. Yes, we do. We got beautiful spark. So we're back to running. We're back to, well, I took the carb off, so we're not quite there. But before I bother cleaning the carbs, I wanted to make sure we got back to at least this point. Now I want to start piecing this all together. And for that, we'll move up front by the headlight bucket. Now, there's a few tools that are going to be really helpful while you're doing this. First, a label maker. I love these. I started using these a while ago for doing wiring with the waterproof tape. I grew up putting blue painter's tape and a Sharpie. And I'll tell you what, after you start moving those wires and manipulating it so much, and a month or two after you label them, you can't hardly tell what it says. So that's a really good way to do that. A multimeter, really nice to have, definitely. If you're not just checking voltage, you're checking continuity, so that helps you trace a wire back to its source and figure out where that's, if it's the right place. And then a 12-volt test light. And these are awesome. This just tells you voltage, voltage. Hook one side to the ground, hook the other to what you think is power. If it lights up, you know you got voltage there. And then you can use your ignition switch or whatever, turn it on and off, and then you'll know if it's switched voltage, because it'll tell you automatically, because it will turn off with the switch. All right, so now we start digging into the wiring. The tools I showed you, I don't necessarily need them right now, except for the label maker. But what I'm going to do is pull up the diagram. I like a nice big screen because I'm old and I'm sitting here on a cell phone. It's just going to make me angry. I'm going to look for probably the turn signals first because I know I need those. Now, when I break into this, there's 400 wires on that one, 500 wires on this one. That's ignition. I know this is headlight. So these loose wires over here are probably going to be my turn signals and parking lights. Now, a very common thing, and this doesn't mean that it's all the way across the board, but I will tell you right now, a very, very common thing for turn signals or parking lights, colors being either green, black and yellow for ground, and blue. And then a lot of times green, or gray, I'm sorry. In this instance, that's almost exactly correct. So we know we're looking for 6 wires. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 free wires right here that don't go to harnesses. And a lot of times a turn signal doesn't go to a harness, it goes to a connector end that'll plug into the pigtail that comes off of the turn signal setup. These colors look right, so let's go for it. Let's see what this says. We move up here to front right turn signal. I know you can't see this too well, but I'm not going to zoom in. You got the gist of it when I pointed out earlier. I'm going to have gray, black and yellow. Gray, I'm sorry, I said black. Gray, blue, and black and yellow. Gray, blue, black, and yellow. Right here. Now, these are all going to be, if you follow the wires down, you'll see that they all, other than the lead wire that's different than the other signal. So I'm going to have a gray one on one, and then I'm going to have a, I believe it's going to be green, is what it looks like over here. Yep, green. So those are my two different colored wires. So that tells me black and yellow is going to be ground for both. So either one of those, it doesn't matter which one I put with which, because that's ground. Both of them are going to the ground. And then blue is the same, so those both tie in as well. That's going to be power for my running lights. So when I turn them on, they're both going to come on together. One blue goes to one side, one blue goes to the other side. Now I've got my different wires, which are green and gray. So that's where I need to pay attention to what it says here. Gray is going to be for the front right. Green is going to be for the front left. And it's that easy to sort these out. It really is. There's nothing difficult about it. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing and just follow it out, pin it out, work through this diagram wire by wire and see what's what, the things that I want to keep. Everything else I'm going to cut, but I'm not going to completely rip off of the harness, because down the road there might be something in there I can use, whether it be for its intended purpose or for a power supply or ground for something else. So I like to just cut that back and hide it and wrap it up. So we'll go ahead and do that. So when you're taking an old wiring harness like this and trying to adapt it to a customized setup, especially when you start adding different headlights, different electronics and speedometers, you're going to end up trying to sort out what everything is. And you saw us going through before and labeling everything. Here I have the front left turn signal. And what I used to do back in the day is just simply strip the ends, tie them together, and make sure the part works, and then let it hang there and do my thing. But time after time, I bumped them together by accident, shorted things out, and it caused problems in the long run. So what I like to do to mitigate that, these are called lever nuts. Now you can get all sorts of varieties of them. This is just a twin side by side. They have this where it's in line as well, which those are awesome for single wires. The cool part about these, they're reusable. So I'm not putting them on as a permanent fix, but what I'm doing is as I'm kind of laying this out and making sure everything works, I can snap these on, and I keep a little bin next to me as I go through. And then I can test all the parts. Then later I'll go in and then solder in the connectors and do what I got to do to make them fit. But as temporary, instead of having something like this that can short against itself, I have something like this, and it's good. And I don't have to worry about it popping off, and I can work through it. And once I once I find out that everything's good to go, I'll get back in there, I'll solder in the connectors, and then I'll continue on the harness. So not a bad idea, something to do. Now these are kind of expensive. The reason I have the side-by-sides is for some reason these are a lot cheaper than the inline ones. I'm like half the price. But every time I go down to stores like Home Depot or Lowe's, whatever, and I see these, I'll just grab a couple and just keep them in a bin. You always pop them right back off and use them on the next project. So there you go. Hopefully that helps out.
Virgin Mary, please.
Before I finalize the wiring, I gotta start mounting up these components and figuring out how we're gonna do this. I think I'm gonna go ahead and start with the tail light. I'm gonna figure out how we're gonna get a mount in here. I want this to kind of tuck up under the crown of this rear hoop. So I'm gonna weld a bar in here that can get hooked onto. So we'll measure that up. We'll start with that, and then we'll move forward and we'll knock out how we're gonna do the dashboard. So here's something to think about when you're working on these older bikes. They didn't come with LED lights. So a lot of the things that you're going to be doing to modernize these bikes is putting LEDs on, especially brake lights and turn signals. Now when you wire it up, you might see this. I've got it left turn signal on and it's just and not doing anything. Well, that's because of the flasher relay. A simple fix. Pull out the old relay, get yourself a digital or electronic LED labeled flasher relay, snap it in, and guess what? You got signals again. It needs it. So if you wire it up and your LED is just staying on, that's probably going to be your problem. Hope that helps. All right, now I got this all cut apart. I'm going to go back in here and grind this down and clean all this up. But let's get some fitment in. What I decided to do was keep these two sections from a factory mount, and I'm not really sure what went in there. It might have been the old factory headlight mount. There was nothing to those. I got myself some rod, and what I did was welded, as you saw, a tube on this. And what we'll do, I'll get some rubber washers, put them in between here. And I'll get the rod in there. And it threads to the other side. We'll go ahead and trim this up where we're on both sides and put lock nuts on either side. Then this aluminum will bend just enough to clamp this steel in place. So we'll mock this all up, make sure that looks good. And then come back through later, grind everything down, smooth it all out. Probably go ahead and powder coat this top piece, and we'll powder coat this bottom mount. All right, we got the dash mounted up. Looking pretty good, I think. Enough room for the cable to get down there. It's not sticking up super high. It goes with the flow. For what it is, we're good. The key will then get mounted in this slot. I think we're all right. We got the tail light mounted up. Headlights back on. Next step is clean up all this wiring, tuck everything up, and start getting all of the wiring mounted where it needs to go. Get the tank on and make a seat. And then I got to get those carbs rebuilt. So next episode, that's what we're going to start with. Now that I have the wiring where it's ready to go, I'm going to get the carbs rebuilt, put those back on. We'll get her fired up, and then we're going to start piecing it back together and make it a whole bike again. So all that's going to come in the next episode, so please stick around and check it out. But until next time, remember, keep it on 2 wheels. Or maybe 4, 6, 8 if you could. Just whatever you do, just remember, I ain't judging. Appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.